What does our universe look like that we want to occupy for that space and time?
Quite often we get part of the picture but can't quite see the whole picture.
So what it's saying is enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
Next time.
In the last one, we were talking about uncertainty, and one of the things that we've become very aware of and certain of is that quite often during our conversation, we use the word actually quite a lot. So
no, actually, you don't. I do.
Oh, no,
You're
I do.
Interestingly, I'm actually. And actually,
Well,
I start a sentence with the word
actually.
as I start actually.
Yeah.
So what does actually mean, George?
Well, actually, and I do say it because during the micro teaching part of one of the courses I did, I noticed that every time I was saying actually in the classroom. So it's something I've either tried to wean
It's one of our
little things. Now,
or tells.
What the dictionary is saying here is that actually is an adverb. We won't go into those. An adverb as the truth or facts of a situation. Really is what it says. Really, and that's part of the quote. And the second one is it used to emphasize that something someone has said or is doing is surprising. Oh, actually.
And most of all, myself. I surprise myself what I'm going to say next all the time because I have no idea actually what I'm going to say. And I'm normally just pivoting and iterating. We've thrown those couple of interesting actually, sort of is another one. One of my favorites is sort of like,
and there's
actually.
Likes. Yeah,
there's a combination. I can do it in combination. So anyone that knows me, actually or otherwise, real or otherwise, knows that my tell is sort of like actually. But we better get on beyond that because actually means well, I think I heard you say real.
Really, but it's
talking
really
about reality. Yeah. Real things that I believe are believed to be real. And as long as I believe it to be real, that's good enough for me.
Well, we're talking about, because if you take the word actual, well, there's actually a combination of words there. We've got actually, which is normally a surprise of something that's just happened, an actual event that's just happened. But there's also the word act in there, which means to do something, in being, doing. I
love it. Because now we're saying act, as in acting, as in film production, as in camera action. Well, and this is back to we were talking about inaction versus action. There's no point in talking about something and not doing it. We need to move from not doing to doing through action. Out of inaction, and to become an actuality. Actually do it. Make it real. And that's what the journey we're sort of going on. We know what we don't want. We're not too sure what we do want. We have a fair idea. We'll recognize it when we get there. We know we have to change. We know we have to go on a journey. This knowing is very important, but there's no point in knowing and not doing. So we have to actually do something about it and act upon it and do and know what you're doing is going in the right direction or any direction.
Well, one of the things that's quite interesting is that a lot of people question, it's that little chitter chat box again, question whether they should do something or should not do something. And the answer quite often to them is, well, look, do it anyway and see what happens, because at least you know by doing it whether it was the right step to take or the wrong step to take. And then you can adjust afterwards and you can take another action in adjusting.
You got to stick in a little caveat there, George. Otherwise people be going out there robbing banks, shooting people. The caveat is with a moral compass. The caveat is, does it make sense? Are you growing and evolving? As not into a monster of any description or mass murderer or narcissics or Nazi. It's a case, well, again, depending on who you are or where you are, it's not for us to judge, but we're hopefully saying we're going on a journey of growth and change and evolution. And we want to be more as one with the universe, and only in the context of opening up to the creativity and the abundance that it could possibly have that's unmanifested, that we want to funnel through ourselves and to manifest to make ourselves happier. We're not, the measure of happiness we haven't really put our finger on yet. We're just saying, not happy doing what we're doing in the past. No, we can be happier doing something else on a journey to happiness, but we touched on this a few minutes ago, we might already be happy in the now. And the next now, we want to be happy too. And we might not need to go on too big a journey if all we did was found ourselves here and now.
Well, what's interesting about the journey that we're doing at the moment is that we've discovered that the act that we need to do in progressing forward is not a single act of a single person. It's two people on that journey, because you get enjoyment out of the journey doing things together as opposed to being on your own. And I think that becomes quite important, because if you're gaining lots of experience of life and you're enjoying the process you're going through, you're going to go, wow, that was really good. But we like to communicate as human beings. And the only way
one is a very lonely number.
It's a very lonely number, yeah, because you're kind of sitting there, you need to reflect and you want to tell the story and you want to share it. But you also want to be able to share it with other people, because by sharing it with the person that went on the journey with you, and we discussed this a short time ago, that each of us have a different perspective of what that moment in time is. So you can actually bounce your ideas backwards and forwards to see whether or not the other person experienced what you experienced. And it also validates the experience that you've had, because then at least 2 or 3 people have had that experience.
An awful lot of people are happy with their own company, and there's no like, I have to get rid of that word like, but I won't become aware of it. I'm totally unaware of it. But I like my own company. My wife sort of feels if you're sitting in a room you're doing nothing. And I go, no. There's something I'm doing is nothing. The nothing I like doing is by myself. And what I'm doing is trying to still the chatterbox and become one with the universe. Actually, I love that. Actually, I was sitting in the garden listening to one side of our last podcast, and she walked by and she heard the voice, but she thought it was me talking as opposed to me listening to the podcast. She said, the garden, we have a chap that helps us do a bit of garden. I'll translate. He does the garden because I can't. He's got the tools, I've none. He enjoys doing it, I don't. So we have this understanding. He does that bit of the garden while I listen to myself talking in the garden. He's there doing the work. I'm sitting there listening to a podcast to see what needs to be cut or stay, or is it good, is it bad, is it indifferent, did I like it, did I enjoy it? But my wife walked by in the middle of this and heard it and going, what the feck is going on? We're paying this chap over here money, and you're sitting there like you're drinking coffee, sitting in the sun, listening to yourself, talking to yourself on a podcast, not even inside your head, but an external podcast version of yourself to yourself. But she says, are you happy? And I says, I'm very, very happy. And she looked and said, actually enjoyed it herself and realised we're both happy. We've never been more happier. We're both in the garden drinking coffee, philosophizing about life and mindfulness versus giving out about bills and what we need to do next, and is everyone taken care of. So she's happy being mindful, doing her yoga and working in the garden. I'm happy with George doing podcasts talking about philosophy and life, the universe and everything, in terms of from the beginning of time to the end of time and everything in between. So I better let you get a word in, or it's the Garvin show.
Well, what's interesting about that is that it was your wife walking past and making a comment. She took an action to say something to you because of her perception of what she thought you was doing. But
get off your arse, Garvin, and do some work.
But
that's what she was saying.
It generated an interaction between the two of you, which also led her to start to appreciate what was going on. So you were then sharing an activity or a past activity that you'd done with her, and then the two of you got enjoyment out of it, and hopefully others will as well. But one of the great things I find is that I will do my activities. Let's say I'm working here, editing away, editing together these programs and making sure that they sort of work. And then when my wife comes home, I've got something now to share with her of my day, and she's then sharing her day. And that gives us an opportunity to chat and discuss the events and the activities that went on during the day separate from one another, so we could actually bring them back together again. So it's still that journey. We're still on a journey. We may have actually
there's a
different action.
That's it. My daughter walked in here earlier between one break and another break, and she was looking at these big paintings, and then I was just letting her know, well, what we're doing is we're manifesting from the universe these ideas that we had into some material items that, and what I was saying to her was, these big, paint, they're 6 foot by 6 foot, they're the chapter headings in our philosophical theory of motivation and self-coaching, a manifestation and a physical representation of the journey that we're currently on. I says that what was written on, like even the one behind me now, it says, I am not a number, is where it started. But now I'm saying to her, forget the number. What it's really now is becoming the I am not. And it might be I am not, whoever the person that I is I am not a number. I'm not happy in my job. I am not happy. I am not. I am not the I am I want to be, is what it's really saying. We don't know what the I am is, and we don't need to worry. We're recognizing that it's the I am not of the now. And the number is representative of jobs and careers and suits and other representations, or the fact you just don't want to be a number in history. You want to be more than a number. You want to be a being. You want to be a spirit. You want to be a legacy. You don't want to be something that's just on a page and forgotten. So it's any combination of above. And that's just the one behind me. There's two more over to the left of me. And one of them is a big elephant in the room. And I'm saying, the elephant in the room is me, or the problem, or the item that has to be got, or the journey that has to be started, or the block that has to be got over. And another one to the left of me is the car, iconic car going on a journey. So what we're really saying is, for any movement of a journey of evolving and growing, of moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset and going on a journey of evolving, it involves change and moving from where you're I am not to a new state of I am. You've got to address the elephant in the room and a suite of problems that we don't know who they are depending on who the individual is, but we're doing that on a daily basis, myself and George. We're coming from two different angles, going on a thread that's now joining us on a common journey.
And what's happening is that you're taking an idea and actualizing it by
and manifesting it.
See, so the actualization is that you're putting into action
something it real,
that will materialize it and make it real. Yeah,
and that's back to the universal consciousness from Deepak Chopra and from what's that girl's name now? I still haven't learned her name.
Yeah,
my brain. Julia Cameron. It's the same. It's the same thing. This idea of the journey from the unconscious to the conscious, the journey from the immaterial to material, to the unmanifested to the manifested. Make the act of making it real, as opposed to science fiction, like fantasy to science fiction to science fact.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was going to say that because it's basically what science fiction gives you a chance to come up with ideas, idealize and dream it, believe it, and then make it an actuality, make it a reality.
If you can't think of it, you can't make it happen.
Yeah.
You got to think of it first. You got to dream it. Then you go, if you can believe it, then you go, I can make this happen. Or somebody, or some there's the thing, the we. There's some combination of a we can make this happen. The dream can come real, but it might involve an awful lot more cogs in the wheel and a lot more people, and therefore the I needs to be a we to make it real. Or there's certain things you can do by yourself, but it won't be as enjoyable. It won't be as much as doing it with more. And therefore, if it's good for you, it's good for the gander. And that's the journey we're going on. I think we want to be reflective of others, showing that we're human and have similar problems and dreams and concerns, and that's the journey. It's anybody can associate.
Well, quite often, what we're trying to do is visualize the artifact or the thing that we're chasing after. But quite often, we get part of the picture but can't quite see the whole picture. But by having the other person who's coming from a different perspective, they can bring the other dimension to what you're trying to do and allow you to make it happen as a group as opposed to an individual on their own.
Actually, we bought the box, the jig with the 1,000 jigsaw pieces in it. I don't want to say the problem, but the opportunity. The opportunity at the moment, rather than the problem, is all the pieces are blank. We know when you put them all together, they will make a picture. But we don't have a picture on the box of what the picture should be. So therefore, we're nearly colouring in those jigsaw pieces. We know if we get to fit them all together later on with square, it doesn't matter if we have to sort of hammer them together, or we might be a couple of pieces short. It doesn't matter. It's what is the picture that's meant to be on the box, and that's very, very personal to everybody out there. It can be, it's what the new you or the current you even looks like. You might actually find the mirror on the wall is the happiest you're going to ever be, but sometimes the chatterbox is saying you're always questioning, this can't be it. I couldn't be, there must be something else. But when you actually look, you go, no, you're happy as pig and shit. Stop thinking of other things when what's in front of you is a life worth living and a dream that most people wouldn't even have.
Well, in the conversations that we've been having over the last few days, we were doing something about the principle of uncertainty, and I started to visualize this image. We were talking about the Fibonacci numbers, so I could actually see the Milky Way.
I was fibbing about the Fibonacci numbers.
Well, I could see the Milky Way, but I could also see the space, and we were talking about the chatterbox, and I could almost see the sides, the 6 sides of the chatterbox pushing away from the Milky Way to open it up.
Is this the Bohr cube now, I'm thinking?
No, it's broken apart. And what was happening was that each element is a mirror of what the person is inside. So although it should be mirroring the Milky Way, I could see the person inside, the embryonic person, basically ready now to develop because they're about to go into the universe. So again, that visualization was only possible because of the conversations that we were having in these little shows.
Well, there's a strange thing. You're visualizing the universe, both outside and then our micro-interpretation of it inside of our head, our personal universe, which again reflects and resonates with the fact that, you know, the universe is eternal, it's limitless, therefore a subset of it can be in our head, and it's our own personal universe because we have a capacity of what does our universe look like that we want to occupy for that space and time? And we're even touching on a little bit just before we came on air, saying, well, actually, we have a lifetime that once we're expired, maybe our legacy is only 20, 30 years later and we're already forgotten in the scheme of things. Or maybe it goes beyond our grandchildren, so 100 years, but potentially we're starting to be forgotten. But like you mentioned, there could have been 5 global extinction events already happened, and 5 different legacy populations could have gone by the wayside. And we're the 6th variant, and we think we're the best. And it could have been they were more advanced than us, but our end game is already in play within this realm of 10,000 years. So even if we wanted it, in the absence of leaving for the stars, we could get knocked out by a caldera, we can get knocked out by a sun flare, we can get knocked out by a couple of meteors, and we think our 30 years or 100 years is important. And, you know, within the next few hundred years or 10,000 years, this whole civilization is gone again. It's a restart. So to get a bit of perspective on things, all that matters is our personal universe at this personal moment in time, and the people that we can affect and do affect, and maybe want to affect a few more, and maybe leave a legacy to prevent or help that others from that happening. But that's an interesting conversation for another day. Your personal wishes and wants might be, I want to save the universe, I want to save the planet, or it might be, I just want to have a good time the next 20 years with my kids and grandkids.
And I think that's probably the more important part, as we begin to realize that at different stages of our lives are literally different chapters of our life as we go through. And as we reach different points in that life, like I've just become a granddad, or I'm seeing my youngster, my grandson, gradually learn to walk. And in 2 weeks, he's gone from being very unsteady on his feet to running around almost backwards. And he's so confident that he can actually balance now, which totally changes the picture of things. And we can see from the way he's developing how to learn, and he's not fettered with different ideologies that have been imprinted on us as older people. But we've now gone through this process where we began to realize and question the world that we live within, and we began to realize that we need to adapt and change to free ourselves up, to disattach ourselves from those ideas that we had, so that we can create new, fresh ideas so we can actually move forward.
To quote the earlier chapter, it's to evolve and grow again. Well, I think I stopped growing a long time. Well, I stopped growing when I reached 6'6". I didn't stop growing outwards in terms of man boobs or moobs and beer belly. I wish I did. I didn't stop growing older and balder and uglier. But in terms of personal growth, in terms of learning new things and more, I'd stopped for a long time. I actually was regressing. I was actually forgetting things. I was getting rid of stuff. I was not wanting to be kept up to date, and as opposed to giving a new start and saying, learn something new. It could be something most basic. I didn't go off and become a musician like yourself. I still have no interest in it at the moment because I don't feel I have that skill set, or maybe I'm not as incentivized in that area given limited time and resources. I want to grow. I think we already are. I've read about 6-7 books in the last month or two on these various motivational coaching, self-help, and realised that we were eating, drinking and speaking that for years already, not knowing we were quoting the greats, and everybody does, and everyone already knows all this. Most of the time they need to look in the mirror and have it affirmed back to them that it's okay to grow, it's okay to change, it's okay to start again, it's okay to learn, and never stop learning. And there's no end you. It's what you end up to be, as how full you are, or what you look like, or what you represent at that point in time. But you shouldn't know with certain what that looks like ever, in my opinion, now, based on what I'm reading. You should be a surprise to you when you get there.
And I was surprised because in the middle of all that, one of my cards suddenly ran out of space, and I had to put another little card inside it and get a little clapperboard going. So I was quite surprised when Garvin actually just stopped.
As long as I'm capturing on my side and you've caught back up with yourself, and Garvin was still going 5 minutes later, which is great. He lets me rant on until I lose breath, or I have to cough or get a drink of water, and then he sneaks in and actually starts talking, and then I have to wrestle it back from him. But it's, to sort of sum it up there, it's not that I was not happy. It's just I know we can be happier. It's not that you had not got lots of trappings of the ego and wealth or health. It's more, have you found your purpose in life? Have you found a real you? I think there's more to me than I know, and I just need to let the genie out of the box. I know, hopefully it's a genie or is a Pandora. It's a mix of the two, and somewhere in between is the reason, the raison d'etre, the reason for me to be on this planet, other than my children and my forebearers and my ancestors and my grandchildren to come, is a great reason to be, and a great contribution in my opinion, and gives me lots of joy. I think I can give an awful lot more. Haven't started, not glass half empty. I found the glass, I want to fill it, and actually then I want to share it. Actually, I want to do the 40 loaves and fishes.
Well, I found on my journey that there have been occasions, at least 2 occasions, where I was starting to look at what was happening in my life and how things weren't necessarily going in the right direction. And I think that's definitely it, because once you find yourself going up what you believe is the right direction, the direction you should be going, you start to feel uncomfortable. You start to feel frustrated, and you begin to realize that you're out of sorts effectively with the universe, because you're no longer on track. And if you imagine one of those little Hornby railway line sets that you remember when they go off the tracks, they start to make a clatter, and you know that at some point they're going to fall over. And
hold on a second. The Hornby train sets went around in circles. That's all they did.
Oh, I know.
You're on one track going around in a circle, going whoo hoo. I go, that's not life. That's not living. That's not what you want.
No, but if you think about that whole process, though, that you do get, if you're on a journey and you're going down a certain path, and you know that there's something that you're meant to do, or you feel that that's what you're meant to be doing, if you start to go off that road, you then feel that you need to somehow get back on it. Now, it means sometimes your life has to change, and it sometimes have to change quite considerably.
A couple of analogy, or I don't even know if I'm using the right word half the time, analogies, stories or ideas that came to mind there was, first of all, do all roads lead to Rome? As one. And the other is, do we take the road less travelled by? And the third one is, do we follow the yellow brick road to Oz and look behind the curtain? In all cases, in my opinion, it's, do we end up where we're going to end up anyway? Are we where we're meant to be regardless of how we got here? Once we recognize where we are, do we know where we're going? And if we didn't know at the beginning, we don't know now, we won't know when we get there anyway. So once we go on, we stay on the road, and when we get the breaks in the road, maybe go the road less traveled by every now and again, because all roads lead to Rome and the Wizard of Oz regardless. The end game, the one certainty, death. Now, we had a couple of conversations about energy back to the universe, and do we get a second time around? And we will definitely revisit that. But if we believe where we're meant to be now at this point in time, and we've come up with that saying a few times, we're exactly where we are meant to be, then when we get to the other end, it'll also be exactly where we're meant to be and how we got there. It's whether we're aware of the journey and we're enjoying it on the way.
I think that there are times where we believe or we feel that we're not enjoying, and it's at that point that we take action to try and get ourselves back on track, or back on the road that we felt that we should have been. And if that road is one that's less traveled, it could be that what's happened is that everybody's going off in a certain direction and dragging us along with them. And it's at that point we realize, no, that's not where I wanted to go. I'm being dragged in a different direction.
And then
you get yourself off taking the awkward little road.
The less traveled is not traveled. It's a fact that it's like the herd mentality, as you were saying. You can be the dog that's sort of putting the sheep into the pen, or you can be the sheep, a wolf in sheep clothing, or you can be the sheep in the pen. You think you're in the matrix. There's a certain amount you're enjoying it, you're existing, but you're not being. You're not. You have the role that you have there. It gets with nearly certainty what it will look like if you keep on going on. And what we're probably arriving at now is, I want to be less certain. I want to have more uncertainty in there, so there's more surprises in there, and I'm actually not as afraid as I was before in terms of my chatterbox and the amount of fear I can come up with. Because now I'm saying, in the absence of being killed and doing reckless events and things, then I'm able, for most uncertainty within reason, to try new things more than before, to let them happen and roll out themselves. And the book there, again, Chopra's book was saying, let the universe unfold itself. Don't come up with a solution to the problem yourself. Be more open to the universe, and it will come up with alternative solutions, which might be more exciting. So, given a little example of where we started on this journey, we set up the Film Production Academy. We're going on a journey of making films and financing them and training individuals the best way possible. While on that journey, we have a bunch of projects coming into our view that we're interested in, from writing books and doing podcasts to having a big art show that we'll be facilitating. There's lots more exciting things, more exciting than what we could come up with now coming into our line of vision, that now we have to start weighing them and choosing between them, because you've got a limited amount of time, because you have only one now. So it's what you do in what order, with what waiting.
Well, again, it's the uncertainty of things, which is quite important. But what we've also found is that, I was talking about chapters. There is a beginning, middle, and end to each chapter, and you get excited at the very beginning because you're on a new part of that journey, and then you enjoy the middle part and where it's actually going. But towards the end, you become aware that you're reaching the end. And the difficulty quite often we have is detaching ourselves from that particular part of the chapter, so we can take the next part which may take us off in a different direction.
That's why we're writing an episodical series. It's like, as you said, Lost. They got lost for a while. They got back again. They're on the island. They're off the island. It doesn't really matter. It's a case of, this is a chapter in our lives. We had chapters before. We'll have chapters after, till it's the end. But in the meantime, those chapters can go on many, many journeys and adventures. And each chapter might have a story in itself in terms of beginning, middle, and end. But it's not the end game.
It's just that particular chapter has an ending to it, and you begin to aware. But the interesting thing is that you do, you do go through a kind of grieving process to each of those chapters because you're having to let go.
I wasn't grieving the end of accountancy, I'll tell you that much.
But I
put a bullet in that horse's head.
Some people do. They go through a kind of grieving because maybe you are enjoying what you're doing and it is something you want to carry on doing, because of the fun that you're having. But there's something inside you starts to say, no, but that's it. That's the time.
You will second guess it. That's the one thing. You've invested so much time in your past and your career, and it could be 30 years learning and getting qualifications, and you go, then your chatterbox will just be naturally, if you stilled it and you don't pay attention to the universe, it'll refill. And we touched on that just before this conversation, and we're saying we've a bunch of these things made, 10 or 11, and the next thing we want to get a little catalogue, we call it an end of 12. We want we have a bunch of work coming down the line for ourselves, which is it's itchy scratchy time again. We have to edit it, we have to put it up on YouTube, we have to do it on LinkedIn, we have to get the good bits, the bad bits. It's all work. But what the end of that work is to actualize it, to make it available to the universe and population of potential listeners and potential audiences and tribes, to let them start having an opinion, whether we go from 1 subscriber to 2, they like or dislike, it's 0 or 1, they comment or don't, they share or don't, they troll or don't. But what the mind here in the chatterbox does is, will they like us, will they love us, will they hate us, should we do this, is it good enough, is it bad? We're back to the chatterbox, fear coming back in, but we have to then actualize it and say, get back out again, let the stillness come back in again, we did it for a reason, we love it, we like it, we're happy in ourselves, we're happy in our being, put it out there, don't overthink it.
Yeah. And the great thing is that by looking at the material that we've done, we can start to learn from the processes that we've gone through and apply them to the next thing that we're about to do, but still recognize that what we've done is sufficient to use for an audience. Because quite often I've worked with people in the past who become so precious with the materials that they've done that they end up going through multiple iterations. They could have had 10 films or 10 books in the space of the time that was spent on that one item. And yet if they just said, right, that's okay for what it is, then we're going to grow. Because if you look at any famous writer, you can see through the progression of their career how they've gone from one perspective and they've changed their views as they've learnt. But that was just a representation of where they were at that time. You talked about your sister and the paintings that you had and what she did to those paintings.
Oh, I've never mind. Look, there's paintings under the bed for 30 years worth of paintings that she had. And she says, that's my blue period, my yellow period, my pink period. And that's not me anymore. And I'm going, nobody's seen them. There's 20 years worth of paintings. There's 40 paintings and they're 6 foot high and 3 foot wide. And nobody they're brand new to anybody and everybody. And to be a different audience for everyone, for that timeline and a past timeline. The question here is whether you let them go. I know I own most of them now. I bought them or was given them as presents, but the whole point is to let go earlier, let it go out there and have its own life. And then it would lead, the iteration that comes back is, I won't do that again, or I'll build on it, or I had a good response, or people wanted it, loved it, hated it. But the whole thing is that it's under the bed or put it out there. We have a choice right now of putting these podcasts onto YouTube on private or press public. Let them out. And I am fearful. I have no idea. It's you're naked to the world. This is me. This is George. This is who we are. It is warts and all. Well, I had a couple of warts. I burnt them off many a year ago.
I think if you let them, if they stay on a hard drive, or they stay in a cupboard, or they stay in a loft, and you've not shared them, then people think you've not done anything. They don't think you've actually created anything. You've not achieved anything. You've not...
Maximum file reached on my side. So the recording stopped. So what it's saying is, enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
Next time.
All right. Well, look, thank you very much, everyone, for listening to the show. We've been talking about where you actualize your images in your head, your fantasies, responsibly, but also to make sure that once you've materialized, let them go. Let them off into the universe and focus on the next thing that you have to do.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications.